The answer to 1984 is 1776.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, he is the #1 overnight talk show host in the world. He is the second largest talk show host on the planet, but he is the #1 overnight in the world, #2 worldwide behind Rush Limbaugh, a close second. And, you know, in the age of Anderson Cooper with 1 million viewers and Glenn Beck, you know, with 3 million on Fox, it's amazing when you talk about media, the only media on this planet of the thousands and thousands of choices on broadcast and mainline media and alternative included, the only audiences that are still mega huge and actually reach giant numbers of people are massive syndicated talk radio. And, of course, he's right up there at the top on internet as well. And it's great to have somebody like George Noory, because I admire Art Bell, incredibly well-spoken, very intelligent. I admire him as a broadcaster. But when George Noory took the show over 7-8 years ago and took the show in a somewhat other direction, started covering a lot of hardcore political issues, forced inoculations, the private Federal Reserve, the Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Grove, George Noory pulls no punches, censors no one, and no one anywhere in what can be called mainstream media. And, of course, he's that crossover. He's both alternative and mainstream. No one can hold a candle to George Noory. And he's with us for the next 45 minutes. We'll take calls for 15, 20 minutes or so into the next hour. Right now, I've got George all to myself. The website's coasttocoastam.com. That's coasttocoastam.com. Really, probably no stranger to most of you out there, but if you're new listeners out there or haven't given it a listen, it's on 500-plus radio stations across the country. In fact, George, I know the show just keeps growing, even past what Art Bell did. How many stations are you on now, George?
As of yesterday, Alex, my affiliates people sent me my monthly report. We are now on 540 stations in North America, which is an all-time high. And as you were saying, we're the second largest affiliated program in the country. Like a horse race, we're coming around the stretch, and I think we're going to be #1. I really do. I can feel it, and I can see it, and that's our goal. So we've got a hard, dedicated staff. And though we're going right after one of our own syndicated folks, I want to beat him. And that's what we're going to do.
Hey, well, Rush is all about the free market of ideas. And so, in fact, I've even seen industry publications say that if you continue to grow like this, within 6 months to a year, you may eclipse Rush Limbaugh.
That's right. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, and we'll see what happens. And I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, I was having lunch in Austin, Texas, and I found a black book, a small black book. I opened it up, and it was the Alex Jones playbook of how to do a successful show. And it said, cover the Federal Reserve, cover inoculations. So I took it, and I changed the format.
Did you really find a black book?
No, I'm kidding.
It's a metaphor, yeah. Oh, man, you are something else. Well, look, we have talked a lot about globalist forces, the big mega Davos, George Soros type folks who, you know, we think of it as America versus the Middle East or America versus Russia. No, these globalists want turmoil. They want the strategy of tension. You've talked so much about that. And now we see what's happening in the Middle East and the Muslim Brotherhood openly being funded by our own government, openly calling for an end to the peace treaty with Israel if they take over Egypt. And the whole world is saying, why would our government overthrow their own puppet? They're not trying to bring in a democracy, which I wish they would, or a free society. They're trying to bring in something in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, in Yemen, in Egypt, that is going to destabilize the entire region. What's your view on that?
Well, there's something very strange going on in the Middle East, Alex. And as you know, I am Middle Eastern. I'm a Christian Lebanese. My father was born in Cairo. My mother, who is Christian Lebanese, was born in Boston, Massachusetts, Pittsburgh, actually. I know the Middle East probably better than most national radio talk show hosts. I was raised in it. I mean, we eat the food. We know the culture. I speak broken Arabic. I mean, I know the Middle East. And there's a situation out there that is very scary right now, and that is you just don't know who the players are. And by that I mean governments have propped up dictatorship regimes for years. We did it with Saddam Hussein. We've done it with Mubarak. And the people of these countries at this point are fed up with it. Whether they hate America or not, and that we can talk about in a moment, they are fed up with the dictators controlling their destiny. The unemployment rate in Egypt is absolutely ridiculous. Those people of young age, the unemployment rate has got to be over 40 to 50%. People are existing on a few dollars a day, and they're at a point where they said enough is enough. Now, the problem with all this is you just don't know who's instigating, how it started. I mean, we saw what happened in Tunisia weeks ago, and now all of a sudden it filtered into Yemen, it's filtered into Egypt, and you don't know if the globalists are behind it or not, and it's very frustrating. I think what happened is Mubarak had to go. He's been in power for 30 years, and governments probably said, geez, enough of this guy. Let's get something fresh in here. But the population of those countries took things into their own hands through the power of the Internet, through the power of Facebook, through the power of Twitter, something they've never anticipated before. And these people have organized their own peaceful protests. Now, just yesterday, we saw what happened in Cairo with Mubarak supporters, henchmen, who started causing problems, shooting and everything else. Now, the place is in chaos. I think Egypt's going to collapse, and I don't know what direction, honestly, it's going to go.
Well, George, I'm going to put a headline up on the TV screen for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers, but for listeners, the London Telegraph, the Associated Press, they all reported U.S. government. Here's the headline: Egypt protest, America's secret backing for rebel leaders behind uprising. And now it's confirmed. They met a year ago, 6 months ago, and again 3 weeks ago with the Muslim Brotherhood, who are openly now saying they're going to overthrow all of the regimes, including the Jordanians, the Saudi leadership, who I'm no fan of any of them. I mean, I've been a big critic of Hosni Mubarak and the black sites and the torture sites and the ghost sites. But at the same time, then you see them maneuvering the Muslim Brotherhood and this El-Baradi, who's this big UN chief, who's a globalist. And our government says, oh, we don't really want freedom there. We just want something new. And then now know this group that George Soros funds, the crisis group, is involved. And then suddenly they're announcing we're going to take over and we're going to break our peace treaty with Israel. And Israel's freaking out. I mean, that looks like the ordered out of chaos card. Here's a headline today: Muslim Brotherhood wants end to Egypt-Israeli peace deal. I mean, this is some scary stuff, but we know the globalists, again, want to play countries off against each other.
Oh, there's no question about it. Look, my father, when I was growing up as a boy in Detroit, Michigan, was a member of an organization called the Mardin Club. Now, Mardin was in Turkey, and we had a lot of relatives who were also born out there. We're not Turkish, but that's where they were. And in Detroit, they had this building. They had a club. It was called the Mardin Club. And I would go with him. I was 8 years old, 9 years old. I would go with him when they would get together on Friday nights or Saturday nights. And this is what they did. They ate Middle Eastern food. They played Middle Eastern music. They played, well, I thought it was dominoes, but it was a different kind of game. And they just had a great time. There was nothing clandestine. They never talked about overthrowing governments. They loved America. They were immigrants who came here legally. Something strange about the Muslim Brotherhood. It was formed in Egypt a long time ago as a peaceful organization to promote Islam. That's what they wanted to do. That's what their intent was. Along the line, some people infiltrated that organization and started spouting the hatred that we see today.
British intelligence, that's on record. Well, they want to destabilize.
You go to Osama bin Laden was basically part of that organization and broke away because that group at the time did not want to be violent. They were peaceful. Now, whether it's political or not, during 9/11, they came out and condemned that horrible situation. But here's the problem today. Number one, Alex, as you and I know when you talk with me on Coast to Coast, we don't know who to believe anymore. We know a couple things that are true, and that is the globalists want to control this planet. The globalists will do whatever they have to do in order to disrupt I am so convinced at this point that if every person who hated America for whatever reason said, you know what, we want peace, let's make this work, we're done with violence, I'm convinced the globalists would do things and blame it on those people again. So you don't know who to believe anymore. And I am deathly afraid that this planet is heading toward some kind of massive destruction in terms of political leanings, that there may be nothing we can do except to continue to fight on the air and do what we're doing. I find it amazing that you and I continue to talk without anybody clipping the wires.
Well, that was the next issue I was going to raise. I want to get back into geopolitically what's happening with the dollar devaluation, now putting incredible pressure on countries like Egypt, where right at half the population is on $2 a day. The IMF, World Bank pressuring them to cut the food allotment. 43 million Americans now on food stamps. So the big central banks, the globalists, trigger a political atmosphere that they know is going to cause upheaval in the Middle East and North Africa. Then they roll in with the, quote, revolutionaries, knowing that revolution was already coming, so they're going to use it to put in a new system, and then it looks like it's going to be a system that wants to have war with Israel. So it's proof right there that this unseen hand is now coming out in the open. But I want to get more into that with you, George, in a moment. But first, you brought up censorship. We have the FCC announcing that they want to run the internet and control it. We've got all these diversity czars at the FCC saying they want to restrict free speech. We have MSNBC now saying the Tea Party is like the, quote, Muslim Brotherhood and radical and dangerous. That came out last night with Chris Matthews. We have the White House regulations are calling to restrict free speech. We have the internet kill switch being announced, similar to what we just saw in Egypt. We're now really starting to see a move where don't talk about political stuff, or you could cause another Tucson shooting when we know the guy was drugged out of his mind and had nothing to do with politics. We're finally not just seeing an attack on the Second Amendment, we're seeing open trial balloons to go after the First as we go into this global depression. George Noory, what's your view on that?
Well, first of all, I can't believe, but I had an email after the Tucson tragedy when I called that shooter on the air a whacked-out lunatic. And the next day, I got an email from a woman who said, how can you do that to him? He's got rights, too. And I went, man, these people just don't understand. They just don't understand. Look, there's something. When I was in school, I was told two things. One is, the airwaves belong to the public. The public's interests, convenience, and necessity. They're not owned by me. They're not owned by corporations. The public owns those airwaves. We were under the fairness doctrine when I was in broadcasting in 1971. That's a long time ago. It didn't bother me. I mean, I think broadcasters have a responsibility, Alex, to balance their shows. I think if you or if I say something about someone or someone, we should back it up with facts and also give them the opportunity or someone to explain how they feel. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's happened today is everybody's gone in these different tangents, these different directions, and they forgot about the most important thing that has kept American broadcasting so strong, and that is balance. And we just don't have that anymore. When I started tweaking Coast to Coast 8 years ago, I did it for one main reason. This planet was changing and changing very fast, and it needed voices and it needed truth. We still do, as you well know, the ghosts, the UFOs, the Bigfoots, the mysteries. We do all that stuff. I love that. But we had to add the other ingredient. And specifically after 9/11 occurred, regardless of how you believe it happened or who did it, we needed to tweak this program, and I did that. And so I devote the first hour to hard news, breaking issues with a coast-to-coast Alex Jones-type flair to it. I don't want to do what mainstream does. You know, I don't want to, by the time I'm on the air, that stuff's been beaten like a horse. And I don't want to go in that direction, but we will cover those topics. But I think governments are taking a very close look at all kinds of things right now, including including a kill switch for the Internet, because they saw what happened in Egypt. And I think these are very dangerous times for us.
Well, sure, I agree with you, but you talk about imbalance. When we have J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs knowingly creating trillions in derivatives, knowing it's worthless, selling it to people, then demanding taxpayer money for it. When you have the government trying to shut down power plants in the U.S., and then building power plants in China, and we're having rolling blackouts, when we have the imbalance of all of this corruption, obviously people are going to get angry. They're going to get upset and try to bring balance back to that. And speaking of what's happening to the economy worldwide, I mean, every economist I have on says we're already in a depression, and we have incredible unemployment. But where do you see the economy going? Where do you see the globalists pushing this?
Alex, let me tell you something. I have never seen a situation where more people were so destitute or in trouble in all my life. I mean, personally, I'm helping my 3 children with their mortgages and their car payments because they're my kids. You know, I can't see them tossed out. You know, they've got some problems financially, as most Americans do right now. I have had friends call me asking for $1,000 or $2,000 that they say, I want to borrow. Now, you know, when you lend money to a friend, you're not getting it back. It's gone. And so you do it. But I've never seen a situation where more people were so backed up. And it's not like they're going to bars every night and, you know, going out to party with them.
And the media is telling us everything's great, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what's happening. Those of us who are working, you and me and other people, are doing okay. We're paying our bills. We're buying things once in a while. We're keeping the economy going. I mean, the automobile sales in the U.S. have gone up. People who are working are spending their money, and they're doing okay. But the number of people who aren't working and who aren't okay continues to grow dramatically. And here's the problem. When you create a society between the haves and the have-nots, when that disparity begins to get wider and wider and wider, we are going to have a disaster. What is happening in Egypt can happen here.
Amazing. George Noory is our guest. We'll continue. We're going to do 15, 20 minutes of calls in the next hour for George. Specific questions for him, 800-259-9231. Stay with us. A lot more coming up. George Noory is our guest, and I want to get more into where he sees this economy going, the loss of liberty, the TSA putting up telescreens in 9,000 locations saying spy on your neighbor. So much of what he's been talking about for decades on radio and what I've been talking about for 16 years is now unfortunately unfolding, and so the credibility of people that cover these type of subjects is really going up. But before we get into that and then come back and take calls, George, for 15, 20 minutes of the next hour, tell us about your books. Tell us about your radio show. Tell us about Coast to Coast AM for folks that may not routinely tune in because, you know, they've got to work during the day. They can always subscribe to Streamlink and listen whenever they want like I do on my iPhone.
Oh, we love Streamlink. It only costs, if you can believe this, 25 cents a day. But, you know, they can get downloads, podcasting, and it's really an exciting facet of listening to the program, along with your terrestrial radio station, which has really been the staple of Coast to Coast over all these years. It continues to grow, Alex. Just yesterday, I signed an extension taking me through 2013, and the network at the same time said, hey, sometime this year, let's talk about a 5-year extension beyond that. So, you know, I'm going to end up being the Casey Kasem of radio. I mean, you know, I'm going to just hang in there as long as I can, bringing everybody the truth. We've got a couple books out. My partner for writing, Bill Burns, who does an incredible job doing 98% of the legwork for these things. Worker in the Light and Journey to the Light. The Worker, of course, being the first one in Journey. And I've got another one coming out in the fall with Rosemary Ellen Guiley called Talking to the Dead, which is more like the old traditional coast-to-coast show. But, you know, I've got a twofold goal, and that is, one, stay healthy, because I had a lot of problems, you know, 10 years ago, and I didn't eat right, and I did stupid stuff, and I decided, you know what, enough is this. And I got into a major workout regimen and eating properly and taking natural supplements, and I hope to God we can continue to take natural supplements. But that's the direction I'm going.
Oh, yeah, you're in great shape. And expanding on that, George, you also have done quite a few national TV shows on Sci-Fi Channel and others. I mean, you're doing a lot.
Yeah, I am. Henry Winkler, the Fonz, approached us a couple months ago, and he would like to do a Twilight Zone type show and said, look, I want you to be Rod Serling. So let's see what he works on. But, you know, the bottom line here is I want this program to succeed. I want you to succeed for people. I'm going to tell you a funny story. Well, as you know, I go back and forth between St. Louis and Los Angeles. You know, my family's in St. Louis, so I have a chance to go see my kids, my soon-to-be 6 godchildren. And we just built this little facility in Hawaii, by the way, that I can pop up there and do a show out of there, too. It gives us that flavor way out there. But I'm at my favorite restaurant in St. Louis called the Cafe Napoli. And I'm sitting there, I sit in the corner, and a guy comes in, and he's staring at me. And I'm going, oh, boy, here we go. And a young guy, his name's Corey, and he comes up to me and goes, oh, my God, it's you. And I said, I figured, oh, I'll sign an autograph. I always do that. Or if they want a picture, I'll do that. You know, it's free. I don't charge for that stuff. I'm not like some of the baseball players. And he comes up to me and he goes, my God, it's you. It's you. And I said, yeah. I put out my hand and he went, God, I love Alex Jones. I went, hey, what?
Hey, I get the same thing all the time. But, you know, George, that's what I love about you. You reach more people than anybody in the world on any media outlet in a single day except for Rush Limbaugh. I mean, there's no doubting that. And you are such a humble, nice, friendly guy, especially in person when we've gone out, you know, to eat before and been able to hang out with you and, of course, Tom Danheiser. George Noory, you know, most radio talk show hosts are pretty arrogant. And most of them don't have other radio talk show hosts on their show. But George has myself on and many other talk show hosts because he's such a confident guy and he's into the information. Back in 1 minute. CoastToCoastAM.com. It's George Noory. And you know, with few guests do I thank them and, you know, kind of butter them up. But I really owe George a lot because I really want to reach people. I want to warn folks about corrupt things that are happening. I get angry about being oppressed. And he's the biggest outlet to ever just give me free reign and to reach 16 million people a night. And I've been on the show probably 60, 70 times. I haven't counted it in the last 7.5 years. And he took a risk putting Alex Jones on. And we were growing exponentially way back then. But now it just supercharged us like nitrous oxide on a drag racer. And I just want to thank you again, George, for helping me get the word out.
Well, Alex, you earned your way on the Coast to Coast. When I started doing the program, I didn't know who you were. You know, I was in the paranormal, the unusual, and I kept getting emails from people saying, you ought to put talk show host Alex Jones on. And, well, at that point, brand new, just replaced Art Bell, Mr. Competitive here, doing what I'm doing. I'm going, God, what do I want to promote another talk show host for? But I started getting more and more and more of these emails, and I said, you know what, I better start listening to this guy. So I Googled you. Up came PrisonPlanet.com, Infowars.com. I started listening to some of the things you did, and I said, I like this guy. And I said, you know, he's like a little brother to me. And I said, you know, the things he says are right on. And then you and I had that first program, and it just exploded our phone lines, and that's been our relationship ever since, other than when you pushed me into a lake in Austin, Texas.
Hey, you got to stop with that joke. I've had people come up to me on the street and go, why'd you push George Noory into the pond? And I'm like, I didn't.
YouTube. I don't know. I think if you just go into the search on YouTube and go Noory Falls, you'll see a 7-second clip coming out of the radio station, KLBJ at night, you, me, Danheiser, and I hit what I thought was a half-inch puddle of water. I had the sprinklers going on all night, and I hit a half-inch pool of water that ended up being 2 feet deep. And I went right down into it and right on my face. And I had that big event, as you know, the Talk Fest, the next day. I didn't have any backup clothes. I was soaked to the gills. And Danheiser had to go out and buy me clothes. I'm in my hotel room, stark naked, waiting for him to get in there with new shoes, pants, and a shirt, and down come the window washers. They come right down to my level, and I'm standing right in front of them, no clothes on, and the guy just keeps cleaning the window. No big deal.
Well, I just want to say, we just played the video, and I am a good 8 feet from you when you fall down. It's Dan Heiser that's behind you.
Harvey Oswald. Sure, you're 8 feet away from me.
Listen, we've only got one more segment with you, but it's a long segment, 12 minutes or so. We're going to go talk to Henry, Al, Bell, Noel, and Tony. Quick questions or comments for George Noory when we come back in this next segment. But what's coming up tonight on Coast to Coast AM? What's coming up in the next few days?
First hour, we'll talk a little bit about Egypt and some other mainstream issues with that coast flavor. And then the full show, a little more coasty tonight as we talk with Dr. Richard Boylan about what he believes to be anti-UFO machines that are flying around all over the planet. So we'll get into that with him. And then Friday, I always dedicate it to some fun, unusual things. We're going to be talking to the people from Ripley's Believe It or Not, and then we'll have open lines later on in the program on Friday night out.
We've only got about a minute, but what did you think of that strange UFO over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem?
Dome of the Rock. Bizarre timing. I mean, things are happening. They're weird. Now, in this particular case, I don't know if it's a sign from above or whether someone's got some drone out there just checking things out. Who knows? But I'm telling you, we get some bizarre things. The strangest story, of course, is the crop formation in Indonesia. Indonesia! I mean, the farmer said he was there 6 hours before and there was nothing there. You can't make it that fast, even with 90 people. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I think they're really gearing up for a fake-type UFO invasion. We know under Project Bluebeam that's there as well, and they've got this Battle of Los Angeles coming out. I mean, they're really pushing it. George Noory is our guest, coasttocoastam.com. Our sites are Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. We've only got him for one more segment because he's got to get some sleep for Coast to Coast AM, midnight Central. That'd be 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern. CoastToCoastAM.com. I'm Alex Jones. And there's so many other subjects I could sit here and hog George with, like what does he think of all the crazy weather, the weather weapons, Al Gore saying the cold weather's caused by global warming, the carbon taxes, the government trying to shut down more power plants. But I don't want to hog him, but briefly, what's your view on the carbon taxes crippling our power plants? We can't build new ones, and we're having blackouts everywhere.
It's all a scam to make money, Alex. I mean, this whole thing. What Al Gore doesn't understand, and what so many globalists who support global warming, is that we are in an Earth cycle. This solar system and the planets in it are warming up. Unless I'm wrong, I don't think we have plants and factories and cars on Mars and Jupiter and Saturn. But those planets are warming up as well. The solar system goes through a cycle, and we're going through one right now. Now, is mankind contributing, speeding things up? That's a possibility. I'm not going to rule that out. But this was going to happen anyway. It'll go away, and it'll start again, whether we have people on this planet or not. But the scam to make more money, squeezing us. I mean, we should do a show on red light cameras and the ridiculously of what they're doing to try to raise more revenue. You talk to any police officer in this country, they're opposed to that. They wish these cameras would fall off the pole.
Well, in San Diego, they were forced to remove them a few years ago because they weren't even following the law, and they were caught shortening the yellow part of the light so people couldn't stop, and it was causing accidents. Absolutely. Going to phone calls. Henry in California, you're on the air with George Noory.
Hi, I was wondering about George's opinion about certain guests and the ability for them to just suddenly de-res out. And it's never with a guest that's talking about, a light thing like tarot cards or, something like the Easter Bunny. It's always about a hard-hitting black budget issue.
Henry, let me tell you something. Like Jordan Maxwell, who's been on the program, and just when he's ready to get into the meat of what he's on the show for, his phone goes dead or something bizarre like that happens. It happens a lot. And as you know, I don't believe in coincidences. I mean, there's got to be some kind of phone kill switch somewhere.
Well, we know. Just like the internet kill switch.
Correct. Yeah, so I think those things happen.
Well, anything else, Henry?
Does he have an opinion about certain in my opinion, ventriloquists that will call in and misrepresent themselves I don't want to say their names, but I really think Alex has been victim to some of these gag pranks, especially when they did the TSA special, that can bypass screeners. But I really think they're professional.
Well, let me stop you because I haven't heard of this, but it wouldn't be ventriloquist. It would be a imitator, somebody calling in and posing as someone. I have that happen a lot. But more than that, they have these computer boards where they record my voice and other people's voices, and they have hundreds of statements, and then they call into shows and have me threaten people, or they call old ladies. And I've actually had the cops call me before, and I've had people call and say, quit calling my house, and they're doing this as a form of harassment. I appreciate your call.
Boy, that hasn't happened to me yet. That's bizarre.
Do you know what he's talking about, the TSA special you did and something happening?
No, I don't. But, we have done programs where we've had guests on and they have mysteriously been clipped away, and then we try to call them back and they never come back online again. It's strange stuff.
Yeah, I've heard that happen over the years. It's happened to Art Bell as well. Just a brief story. When I was at Bilderberg and covering it on your show in 2008 in Chantilly, and Obama was coming to be there, after it was over, we were at a steakhouse. It had just ended after the 2 days. I called my wife. She told me one of her parents was sick. Hung up the phone, and somebody called and said, we're basically from the government. We want you to know we just heard what your husband said to you. So they let her know they were listening, and then they basically, threatened her and did some other things. So, yes, that stuff goes on.
And it has been going on, Alex, for a long, long time, but it's getting worse, don't you think?
It certainly is. It's crazy. Let's talk to Al in Texas. You're on with the biggest talk show host overnight in the world and about to take the crown from Rush Limbaugh as the biggest, period, George Noory. Al, you're on the air.
Hi, guys. Much respect to you both. Quickly touching on the telephone phasing out, I used to see the same thing on Matrix News Network when I would watch that when I lived up north. But my main question for you, Mr. Noory, I don't get a chance to listen to your show a lot. I'm usually asleep. I have to work very early in the morning. I do listen to Alex Jones, and I've heard his take on China, and I agree with a lot of what Mr. Jones has to say about China, but I would like to get your take on what exactly you think, or what you think about the Chinese takeover and how everything is going over there. I mean, you can't buy a box of matches at Kroger's without it being made in China.
Sure. Good question, Al, from Texas. Thanks for the call. George, your view on Hu Jintao bad-mouthing the dollar at the state dinner, having their pianist play an anti-America song, being the biggest owner of our debt. What's your view?
Well, first of all, real quickly, you can always get Streamlink for 25 cents a day and podcast it. The show will be waiting for you in the morning right there for you, so you don't have to worry about sleep. China has put together one of the most brilliant economic tactics I've ever seen. Here was a nation 30, 35, 40 years ago that could barely do anything. Now they're pumping out everything in a massively growing economy. They are brilliant at what they do. Unfortunately, 75 people run that communist country, and they've got their eyes on Taiwan and everything else, and they're not going to stop. They have incredible patience, and they will continue to do what they do. They already own most of America. They own our debt. We are slaves to them, and it's just a matter of time when they decide to call in their chips.
I agree with that statement, and there's the other facet of the globalists making deals with China and then using regulations to shut down China's competition here in the U.S. That's what Kissinger and others are all about, and it's so dangerous. Belle in South Carolina, you're on with George Noory.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Bill.
Hi. I just wanted to say, Mr. Noory, that I'm very happy with the way the show is going now. I'm really excited about what you're doing, and you're such a beautiful soul. About the weather modification, I have a link for everybody. This particular document pretty much answered the question for me of whether or not the weather's being controlled, and the logical conclusion that I come to is that yes, it is always, and that every event is being manufactured. It's kind of a long link, but it's on the cftc.gov site.
Oh, the CFR has a report about weather manipulation. Send us that link. Send that link to George. I appreciate your call, Bell. George, more and more they just admit that they're doing geoengineering.
Oh, of course they there. We know what's been happening in Dubai and every place else. It's happening. Let me give out my email address, Alex, to any of your listeners who want to send me material. George at Coast2, you got to put that TO in there, coasttocoastam.com.
Let's jam in a few more here because we only got about 3 minutes left with George. Noel in Illinois. You're on the air with George Noory.
God bless you both. George, I heard your interview with Ty Bollinger the other night. Alex, you should interview him. This guy is unbelievable. He is fighting the resistance. He is V for victory. 2 questions quickly. George, your thoughts on Big Sister Homeland Security being brazenly out in the open with everything. She will make her debut on the Super Bowl with a commercial. If you see something, say something.
That's right. They're using taxpayer money to force their messages on us.
The only victory we've got is they're doing away with that lousy color scheme, which I hated from the get-go.
What's your view on the telescreens going in stores all over the country saying, watch your neighbor?
Do you remember years ago we would watch films and movies where you'd see Big Brother on a huge screen talking to us constantly while people walked and shopped? That's where we're headed. That's going to happen. I think it's horrible, but it's going to happen, Alex. You're going to have these screens all over the planet where you'll have this Big Brother, maybe even a computer-animated guy looking at you, right? Just saying, do this, do this, do this.
Unbelievable.
And,
they are... Yeah. They're doing it. It's happening. Last caller for George Noory. You can hear more of him tonight, midnight central, coasttocoastam.com. Ryan in Texas, you're on the air.
This is the first time I've actually got through. I appreciate you taking my call. I had a question for Mr. Noory about the glass tubes of Mars, actually.
Well, it's an incredible story. If you believe that Mars was once inhabited, then you have to believe that it was intelligent life and that they built structures on Mars, on the moon, and God knows where else. I happen to believe that there are extraterrestrials out there in the universe, that we've been visited before, and we might even have been seeded. So it's entirely possible that there are structures on these other planets and moons throughout our solar system.
Well, I know this. There's ice caps on Mars, and they claim they found evidence that there was life there, and I don't think we're the only creatures in this universe of hundreds of billions of admitted galaxies. The problem is there's just so much conflicting information out there, but folks can decipher through all of it and try to make up their own mind, certainly at coasttocoastam.com. George, we're about to end this segment. I want to say bye to you briefly during the break, but I just want to thank you for, again, exposing my information to 16 million people. That's 16 million every night, a lot more than that over the years. And just appreciate the work you're doing for the First Amendment.
Well, Alex, I'll continue to do it, and you continue to do what you do, and maybe one day we'll win this battle.
Well, I mean, we should have talked about that. Do you agree the tide's turning, the awakening is accelerating?
The awakening is accelerating. I'm not sure we're winning yet, but at least it's accelerating.
At least we're in the fight. Well, that's George Noory of coasttocoastam.com, second biggest syndicated program in the country and going out worldwide via Premier Radio Networks. And we appreciate George and everybody else's help getting us on XM. We start weekdays live instead of being re-aired at night.